I was standing in Seattle baggage claim when two officers in dress blues walked straight toward me. Not past me. Toward me. My duffel bag hadn't even hit the carousel yet. I'd been awake for 19 hours, smelled like recycled airplane air, and my lower back was screaming from the flight out of Alaska. All I wanted was to grab my stuff, find a decent burger, and crash at the airport hotel before my connecting flight home to Connecticut. Instead, I got this. Captain Veronica Hayes? The taller one had a voice like gravel. My stomach dropped. Nobody uses your rank and full name unless something's wrong. That's me. We need you to come with us, ma'am. No explanation. No small talk. Just that blank professional mask they teach you to wear when delivering bad news. They led me to a small office past the rental car desks. Gray walls. Fluorescent buzz. A metal table with one chair on each side. The shorter officer slid a document across to me. Charge, falsifying military service records. The words didn't make sense at first. I read them 3 times. There's been a mistake, I said. The report was filed 2 weeks ago. Anonymous. Anonymous. My brain went quiet in that specific way it does right before something breaks. Because I knew exactly who filed it. Claire. My sister. She was the only person who had access to my old files from when I cleared out Dad's house last year. The only one who'd been acting strange since I visited her in New Jersey back in October. Asking weird questions about my deployments. Pushing me to tell the truth about things I didn't even understand. And now this. Your security clearance has been suspended pending investigation, gravel voice continued. You've been removed from the promotion shortlist. A court-martial hearing is scheduled for February 14th in Colorado Springs. Valentine's Day. How fitting. I didn't cry. Didn't yell. Something inside me just went cold and still. Can I see the report? That's classified during the investigation. Of course it was. I flew 5,000 miles because Claire begged me to come home for the holidays. Said it was important. Said family needed to stick together after Dad passed. The moment these officers appeared, I knew I'd made a terrible mistake. By the time I left that office, my career was hanging by a thread. And my sister had cut the rope. The charges didn't make sense because I'd never falsified anything. But someone had. 3 days after Seattle, I was sitting in my attorney's office in Virginia going through my service record. Major Dennis Kowalski, JAG officer, kept his face neutral as he flipped through page after page. Walk me through your first deployment, he said. Maryland. 5 years ago. Logistics coordination. Fort Meade. Nothing special. Says here you flagged irregularities in equipment shipments. I remembered. Yeah. Supplies going to locations that didn't match the authorization codes. I documented everything and sent it up the chain. And? My CO told me it was handled. Never heard about it again. Kowalski tapped a yellow sticky note on one page. This evaluation was sealed. Did you know that? No. It references your report. Says you displayed excessive concern regarding routine logistics procedures and recommended you for additional stress management resources. Translation, they made me sound paranoid. That's not what happened, I said. I believe you. But here's the problem. He turned his laptop toward me. The prosecution claims you altered your combat exposure records, inflated your deployment dates, and added commendations you never earned. They have documents showing discrepancies. I scrolled through the files. Dates that were off by weeks. Citations I didn't recognize. A medal I never received. I didn't change any of this. Then someone else did. Question is why? My phone buzzed. Text from a number I didn't recognize. Stop digging. You don't remember everything anyway. I showed Kowalski. He didn't look surprised. When did you take medical leave? October 2 years ago. I never took medical leave. He pointed at another document. Says here you did. 2 weeks. Psychiatric evaluation recommended. A cold feeling crawled up my spine. I'd been in Alaska that October. I remembered the snow. The northern lights. Nothing. There was a gap. 2 weeks where I couldn't remember what I did or where I stayed. There's something else, Kowalski said quietly. Your sister Claire received a visit from someone claiming to be a federal liaison 3 months ago. They told her if she didn't report you, she'd be charged as an accomplice to fraud. The room tilted. Claire didn't betray me because she wanted to. Someone forced her hand. And they'd erased parts of my memory to cover their tracks. Colorado Springs in February feels like the edge of the world. The courthouse sat near the mountains, all stone and flags and cold glass windows. I walked in wearing my dress uniform, every ribbon perfectly aligned, knowing half the people in that building thought I was a fraud. The hearing room was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling. Government-issued chairs. A flag in the corner that hung completely still. Then Judge Harold Whitman entered. Late 50s. Silver hair cut military sharp. Chest full of ribbons that told stories I'd never hear. He moved like someone who'd spent decades making decisions other people had to live with. His eyes found me immediately. And stayed there. Not in a creepy way. More like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't balance. The prosecution started strong. They had documents. Timelines. A whole presentation about how I'd systematically inflated my record over 5 years. They made it sound like I'd been running a con since my commissioning. My attorney objected twice. Got overruled both times. I sat there watching my career get dismantled in real time. Then, 90 minutes in, Judge Whitman did something I'd never seen in a military court. He stood up. This courtroom is cleared. Everyone out except Captain Hayes and her counsel. The prosecutor looked confused. Your Honor, we're in the middle of. Out. Now. The room emptied in 30 seconds. Doors closed. Silence. Judge Whitman sat back down, folded his hands, and looked straight at me. Captain Hayes, your sister didn't start this investigation. She was used. I stopped breathing. For the past 18 months, my office has been running a separate investigation into logistics fraud involving your former unit in Maryland. Classified shipment rerouting. Equipment disappearing from manifests. Millions of dollars in military assets ending up in unauthorized locations. He slid a folder across the table. Someone high up needed a scapegoat. Your sealed evaluation from 5 years ago flagged you as inconvenient. So they altered your records to make you look like a liar. Then they threatened your sister to make sure you'd be investigated. My hands were shaking. Claire thought she was saving herself, Whitman continued. Maybe even saving you. She had no idea she was being manipulated. Why are you telling me this? His expression didn't change. Because you documented something in Alaska that people want buried. The question is, how much do you actually remember? Those missing 2 weeks. The gap in my memory. I don't know, I whispered. Then we need to find out. The hearing resumed an hour later. But everything had changed. Judge Whitman started asking questions the prosecution wasn't prepared for. About my original reports from Maryland. About the equipment shipments I'd flagged. About why my sealed evaluation used language typically reserved for security risks. The lead prosecutor kept glancing at his notes like they'd been written in a foreign language. My attorney caught on fast. Started objecting to their evidence on grounds of authenticity. Demanded chain of custody documentation. Pushed back on dates that didn't match official deployment records. By the end of day one, the prosecution looked rattled. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt hunted. That night in my hotel room, I pulled out everything I had from my Alaska deployment. Orders. Duty logs. Personal notes I'd kept in a small notebook because I didn't trust digital files. October. 2 years ago. My notes stopped on October 7th. Picked back up on October 23rd. 16 days. Gone. I remembered arriving at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson that fall. Remembered the first snow. Remembered processing equipment manifests in a warehouse that smelled like diesel and cold metal. Then nothing. Then I was back at my desk like those weeks never happened. According to my official records, I'd taken emergency medical leave. Psychiatric evaluation recommended due to work-related stress and paranoid ideation regarding routine supply chain operations. I never saw a psychiatrist. I never requested leave. So where the hell was I for 16 days? My phone buzzed. Another text from that unknown number. Claire has the documents they don't want found. But they're watching her now. Don't call her. Don't go to her house. Wait. I stared at that message for 20 minutes. Then I opened my laptop and booked a flight to New Jersey anyway. Judge Whitman had scheduled a continuation hearing for next week. Off the record. No cameras. No official transcripts. He'd used words like sealed proceedings and national security implications. That's when I knew this wasn't just about my career anymore. This was about something I'd seen. Something I'd documented. Something dangerous enough that people were willing to destroy my life to keep it buried. I pulled up my old emails from Alaska. Searched for anything from October. Found one. Sent to myself at 3:47 a.m. on October 6th. Subject line, backup, do not delete. The body was blank. But there was an attachment. A compressed file labeled, manifest_discrepancies_September_October.zip. I'd never opened it. My hand hovered over the mouse. If I clicked that file, there was no going back. Whatever was inside had already cost me my clearance, my promotion, and almost my entire career. It had turned my sister into an unwitting accomplice and put both of us under surveillance. But I needed to know. I clicked. The file opened. Spreadsheets. Photos. Scanned documents. Hundreds of pages. Equipment shipments from Alaska to locations I didn't recognize. Authorization codes that didn't match any official DoD database. Signatures from officers I'd never heard of. And photos. Crates being loaded onto unmarked civilian aircraft at 2 a.m. Manifests listing training equipment next to serial numbers for weapons systems. Shipping destinations in countries we weren't supposed to be operating in. I'd documented everything. And then someone had made me forget. My phone rang. Unknown number. Not the same one from the texts. I answered without thinking. Captain Hayes. A woman's voice. Professional. Cold. You need to stop looking into this. Who are you? Someone trying to keep you alive. Delete that file. Show up to your hearing. Accept whatever deal they offer. And walk away. Why would I do that? Because your sister is currently at a coffee shop in Hoboken. Blue coat. Sitting by the window. And there are two men in a gray sedan parked across the street who've been there for 40 minutes. My blood went cold. If you keep digging, they won't just destroy your career. Do you understand? The line went dead. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Then my phone buzzed one more time. Judge Whitman, don't go to New Jersey. Trust me. I have eyes on your sister. She's safe. Come to my office tomorrow morning. 0600, bring everything you just found. I stopped in the hallway. 16 days missing from my memory. A judge running a secret investigation. And people threatening my sister to keep me quiet. I'd walked into Seattle baggage claim thinking I was coming home. Turns out, I'd walked straight into a trap that had been waiting for years. Judge Whitman's office didn't look like a place where secrets got exposed. Neat desk. Family photos. A bookshelf full of military law references that probably hadn't been touched in years. Morning light coming through blinds that were exactly half closed. He poured 2 cups of coffee without asking if I wanted one. You opened the file, he said. Not a question. How did you know? Because you're here at 0600 looking like you didn't sleep. And because whoever's monitoring you got nervous enough to make direct contact. He sat down across from me. What did they say? I told him. The phone call. The threat about Claire. The demand to delete everything. Whitman didn't look surprised. Your sister contacted my office 4 days ago through an encrypted channel. She's been working with us since January. The coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. Claire has copies of documents that were removed from your original Maryland reports. She also has communications between a DoD contractor named Marcus Vance and someone inside your chain of command. Vance is the one who approached her in November claiming to be a federal liaison. Where is she now? Safe house in Pennsylvania. She's been there since Tuesday. Relief hit me so hard I had to set the coffee down. She thought she was protecting you by filing that report, Whitman continued. Vance told her if she didn't cooperate, you'd both go down for fraud. He showed her altered documents that made it look like you'd been falsifying records together. Said he could make the whole thing disappear if she just filed an anonymous complaint. So she did. Wouldn't you? If someone showed you evidence that your sister was committing federal crimes and told you that turning her in was the only way to save both of you? Yeah. I would have. Claire figured out something was wrong when Vance kept pushing for more information. Details about your Alaska deployment. Questions about what you remembered from October 2 years ago. She started making her own copies of everything before she handed anything over. Smart. Claire had always been smarter than me. She reached out to a friend who used to work DoD oversight. That friend contacted me. I've been building a case for the past 3 months. A case against who? Whitman opened a folder. Inside were photos of 3 men I didn't recognize and one I did. Colonel Warren Kemp. My former commanding officer from Alaska. Kemp is currently Deputy Director of Defense Logistics in the Pentagon. He's been in that position for 18 months. Before that, he ran logistics operations at Elmendorf-Richardson. Before that, Fort Meade. My old units. Both of them. We believe Kemp has been facilitating illegal arms transfers for at least 6 years. Equipment gets listed as training materials or surplus. Gets shipped to approved locations on paper. But somewhere in transit, it disappears. Ends up sold to private military contractors, foreign governments we don't have agreements with, or worse. And I documented it. You documented shipments in Maryland that didn't match authorization protocols. You flagged it. And Kemp buried your report by having you flagged as paranoid. When you transferred to Alaska, you started noticing the same patterns. So in October 2 years ago, you compiled everything you'd found and prepared to submit it through official channels. I don't remember doing that. Because you were removed from duty before you could. Medical emergency. Psychiatric hold. You spent 2 weeks in a private facility outside Anchorage undergoing treatment for acute stress and delusional thinking. I was never delusional. I know. But that's what the paperwork says. And while you were there, someone made sure you forgot what you'd been working on. We found trace evidence in your medical records of medications that can cause temporary amnesia when administered in specific combinations. They drugged me. Locked me up. Erased my memory. Then sent me back to work like nothing happened. The file you emailed yourself was your insurance policy. You must have suspected something was coming. Smart move. If you've known about this for months, why didn't you contact me sooner? Whitman's expression hardened. Because I needed them to come after you. I needed them to alter your records, threaten your sister, and file false charges. I needed evidence of an active conspiracy, not just financial irregularities from years ago. You used me as bait. Yes. I should have been angry. Should have felt betrayed. But mostly I just felt tired. The sealed hearing starts Monday, Whitman said. Claire will testify. You'll present the files you recovered. I've subpoenaed Kemp and 2 other officers involved in the logistics chain. We're also bringing in Marcus Vance. And if they don't show? Federal marshals are already in position. They'll show. I stared at the photos on his desk. Kemp looked different than I remembered. Older. More polished. Like someone who'd spent years getting comfortable with corruption. What happens to my career after this? If everything goes according to plan, you'll be fully exonerated. Reinstated with back pay. Possibly a commendation for exposing the fraud. And if it doesn't go according to plan? Whitman didn't answer right away. Then you and your sister both disappear into witness protection, and I spend the rest of my career wondering what I could have done differently. Great. No pressure. I picked up my coffee. It had gone cold. One more thing, Whitman said. When you're in that hearing room Monday, you need to act like you don't know any of this. Confused. Defensive. Scared. Can you do that? I thought about Seattle baggage claim. Those officers walking toward me. My whole life falling apart in a gray room with fluorescent lights. Yeah, I said. I can do that. Monday morning arrived cold and sharp. The sealed hearing room was different from the main courtroom. Smaller. No gallery. No public access. Just a heavy door with a keypad lock and a sign that read, "Authorized personnel only." I sat next to my attorney wearing the same dress uniform from last week. Same ribbons. Same face that I'd practiced in the mirror, confused, defensive, maybe a little scared. Not hard to fake when most of it was real. Judge Whitman entered first. Then the court reporter, who signed about 15 different non-disclosure agreements before sitting down. Then 2 officers I didn't recognize wearing badges that said, Defense Criminal Investigative Service. Then Claire walked in. I hadn't seen my sister in 4 months. She looked thinner. Tired. Her hair was shorter, like she'd cut it herself without a mirror. But when our eyes met across the room, something passed between us that didn't need words. We were both done being used. The prosecution table sat empty. Whitman had dismissed the original team and brought in a DOD attorney named Captain Reeves who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. This hearing is sealed under national security provisions, Whitman began. Nothing said in this room leaves this room. Understood? Everyone nodded. Miss Claire Hayes, you're here voluntarily as a witness. You've been granted immunity for your testimony. Please state for the record how you came to file a complaint against your sister. Claire's voice was steady. A man named Marcus Vance contacted me in November. He said he was with the Defense Intelligence Agency and that my sister was under investigation for falsifying her service record. He showed me documents that looked official. Dates that didn't match. Citations that seemed wrong. He told me if I didn't file an anonymous report, I'd be charged as an accomplice. Did you believe him? At first, yes. He had details about Veronica's deployments that only someone with access would know. He knew about our father's service. About family conversations we'd had. It felt legitimate. When did you start to doubt? When he kept asking for more. He wanted to know what Veronica remembered about Alaska. About specific dates in October 2 years ago. About whether she'd kept any personal notes or files. That's when I realized this wasn't about record keeping. This was about something she'd seen. Judge Whitman nodded to one of the investigators, who placed a stack of documents on the table. Can you identify these? Claire leaned forward. Those are copies I made before giving anything to Vance. Original reports from Veronica's time at Fort Meade. Equipment manifests. Authorization codes. Email chains between logistics officers discussing shipment routes that didn't match official records. The investigator spread them out. Page after page of evidence. Shipments listed as training equipment with serial numbers for weapons systems. Destinations in Eastern Europe, North Africa, Southeast Asia. Approval signatures from officers who, according to official records, were never stationed at those locations. These documents were removed from Captain Hayes's original personnel file, Whitman said. Someone went through 5 years of records and extracted every reference to her initial whistleblowing attempt in Maryland. Captain Reeves, the DoD attorney, looked like she was watching a building collapse in slow motion. Your Honor, she said carefully, if these documents are authentic, we're looking at systematic evidence tampering at the highest levels. They're authentic. We've had forensics verify them. Whitman turned to me. Captain Hayes, do you recognize these shipment manifests? I leaned forward. Studied them. Felt something click into place in my brain. Yes. I flagged these in Maryland. Sent a report through my CO, was told it was handled. And in Alaska? Did you notice similar patterns? I started to. That's why I stopped. Because I was remembering. October. The warehouse. Late nights going through shipping records that didn't balance. Finding the same inconsistencies I'd seen in Maryland but on a much larger scale. Equipment worth millions disappearing from manifests. Authorization codes that traced back to shell companies. A whole network of falsified paperwork designed to move military assets off the books. I compiled everything, I said slowly. I was going to submit it through the Inspector General's office. Bypass the chain of command entirely. And then I woke up in a hospital with no memory of the previous 2 weeks and a psychiatric evaluation saying I was paranoid. One of the investigators placed another document on the table. My medical records from that October. Medications listed that I'd never heard of. Dosages that seemed excessive. Daily notes about my progress in treatment for delusional thinking and occupational stress disorder. All signed by a Dr. Patricia Morse. Dr. Morse doesn't exist, the investigator said. The medical license number on these forms belongs to a retired Navy psychiatrist who died in 2019. The facility listed as your treatment location was shut down 6 months before your alleged stay. The whole thing was fake. They'd drugged me. Hidden me somewhere. Created a false paper trail. Then dumped me back at my unit with gaps in my memory and a record that made me look unstable. Who authorized this? I asked. Whitman looked at the door. We're about to find out. The door opened. 3 men walked in wearing dress uniforms. The first 2 I didn't recognize, a Navy captain and an Army major, both looking deeply uncomfortable. The third was Colonel Warren Kemp. My former commanding officer. Current Deputy Director of Defense Logistics. The man who'd buried my Maryland report, orchestrated my Alaska disappearance, and spent years making sure nobody would ever believe me. He looked at me once. No recognition. No guilt. Just cold calculation. Then he looked at Judge Whitman and said, "I'm invoking my right to counsel. This hearing is over." "Sit down, Colonel," Whitman said quietly. "This hearing is just getting started." Kemp didn't move. Behind him, two federal marshals stepped into the doorway. I said sit down. Kemp sat. The room felt like all the air had been sucked out. Colonel Kemp sat rigid, hands folded on the table in front of him. The Navy captain and Army major flanked him like they were trying to disappear into the walls. Judge Whitman opened a new folder. This one was thicker. "Colonel Kemp, you're here under subpoena to answer questions regarding equipment procurement and shipment authorization during your tenure at Fort Meade and Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson. You have the right to legal counsel, but this is an investigative hearing, not a criminal proceeding." Yet. The word, yet, hung in the air like a blade. "I have nothing to say without my attorney present," Kemp said. "That's fine. You can listen." Whitman turned to the investigators. "Present the Alaska evidence." They pulled out enlarged photographs. The same ones I'd seen in my backup file. Crates being loaded onto unmarked aircraft. Shipping manifests with mismatched codes. Destinations that made no sense for routine military logistics. These photos were taken by Captain Hayes over a 3-week period in September and October, 2 years ago. She documented 47 separate instances of equipment being diverted from authorized shipping routes to unmarked civilian aircraft. One of the investigators pointed to a specific photo. This cargo plane is registered to Meridian Logistics Solutions, a private contractor based in Delaware. On paper, they provide transportation services for approved DoD surplus sales. In reality, they're a shell company owned by a defense contractor named Titan Strategic Group. I knew that name. Titan had been all over the news last year for securing massive contracts in conflict zones. Titan Strategic Group is partially owned by a holding company that, through 3 layers of subsidiaries, is controlled by a former Pentagon official. That official left government service in 2020 and now sits on Titan's board of directors. The investigator placed another document on the table. He also happens to be Colonel Kemp's former mentor and the person who recommended him for his current position. Kemp's jaw tightened. First sign of emotion I'd seen. The equipment being shipped through this network wasn't surplus, Whitman continued. It was current-issue weapons systems, communications gear, and tactical equipment worth an estimated $43 million over a 6-year period. All of it listed as training materials or decommissioned assets. All of it ending up in the hands of private military contractors who then sold it to the highest bidder. Captain Reeves looked like she might be sick. Captain Hayes discovered this network twice, Whitman said. First in Maryland, where her report was buried. Then in Alaska, where more aggressive measures were taken to silence her. He turned to me. "Captain, do you remember a Major Frank Sutton from your Alaska deployment?" The name triggered something. Yes. He was, logistics coordination. Worked night shifts in the warehouse district. Major Sutton committed suicide 3 months ago. Left a note saying he couldn't live with what he'd done. Before he died, he sent a package to his sister. That package contained detailed records of every shipment he'd helped process through the illegal network, including documentation of your forced psychiatric hold. Another folder opened. More papers spread across the table. Authorization forms for my medical transfer. Signed by Kemp. Orders to transport me to a private facility in Anchorage. Treatment protocols that included memory-suppressing medications. All of it in black and white. Major Sutton's records also include audio recordings, Whitman said. Conversations he secretly recorded as insurance. Would you like to hear them, Colonel? Kemp's hands tightened on the table. The investigator pressed play on a small recorder. Static. Then voices. Problem is Hayes won't let it go. She's already compiled enough evidence to trigger a full investigation. Then make sure she can't testify. How? I don't care how. Medical discharge. Psychiatric hold. Whatever it takes. Just make her disappear long enough for us to clean this up. The recording clicked off. Kemp's voice. Clear as day. That recording is dated October 4th, 2 years ago, Whitman said. 3 days later, Captain Hayes was removed from duty. The conversation was between you and Marcus Vance, the contractor who later threatened Claire Hayes. Kemp stared straight ahead. I'm not saying anything without my attorney. You don't have to. Whitman leaned forward. Because Major Sutton already said it for you. And unlike you, he decided to tell the truth before it killed him. The federal marshals moved closer to the table. That's when Kemp finally looked at me. Not with anger. Not with fear. With something worse. Satisfaction. Like he knew something we didn't. You can't prove any of this will stick, he said quietly. I have friends in places you can't reach. This hearing means nothing. In 6 months, you'll all be reassigned to bases nobody's heard of, and I'll still be in the Pentagon. Judge Whitman smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. That's where you're wrong, Colonel. Because there's one more person who wants to talk to you. The door opened again. And Marcus Vance walked in wearing handcuffs. Marcus Vance looked different than I'd imagined. Average height. Expensive suit under the orange jumpsuit. The kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting him. Exactly the type of person who could approach my sister and convince her he was government. He sat down across from Kemp without making eye contact. Mr. Vance has agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence, Whitman said. He's been in federal custody since Friday. Claire, can you confirm this is the man who contacted you? My sister nodded. That's him. Vance cleared his throat. I was hired by Titan Strategic Group to handle security concerns related to their logistics operations. When Captain Hayes started asking questions in Alaska, Colonel Kemp contacted my supervisor. Said she was a problem that needed managing. What did that mean? Whitman asked. Initially, just monitoring her communications. Making sure she didn't submit reports through official channels. When she compiled evidence anyway, Kemp ordered a more permanent solution. The psychiatric hold. Yes. I arranged transport to a private facility. Made sure the paperwork looked legitimate. Coordinated with a contract medical team to administer treatment that would create memory gaps. He said it like he was describing routine office work. When Captain Hayes was released back to duty, we monitored her for signs she remembered anything. She didn't. Case closed. Until she started getting close to a promotion that would have given her access to higher-level logistics oversight. So you went after her sister? Vance nodded. Kemp wanted her credibility destroyed before she could cause more problems. I contacted Claire Hayes and convinced her that filing a complaint was the only way to protect both of them. She believed me because I had access to altered documents that made her sister look guilty. Claire's hands were shaking. I reached across and squeezed her arm. What Claire didn't know, Vance continued, was that she was smarter than we gave her credit for. She made copies of everything before handing it over. When I kept pushing for more information, she got suspicious and reached out to someone who could help. Who did you reach out to? Whitman asked Claire. A friend from college. He works civilian oversight for DoD contracting. I told him something felt wrong. He made some calls. Eventually got me in contact with your office. And you've been cooperating since then? Yes. I turned over all the original documents. Wore a wire during my last 3 conversations with Vance. Provided details about every interaction we had. Judge Whitman pulled out another folder. Those recordings gave us enough evidence to arrest Vance. His testimony, combined with Major Sutton's records, gives us a direct line to Colonel Kemp and the officers who helped him. Kemp was still staring straight ahead. But his breathing had changed. Faster. Shallower. The Army Major and Navy Captain you brought in today, Whitman said, nodding at the 2 silent officers, have both agreed to testify in exchange for leniency. They'll detail their roles in processing fraudulent shipment authorizations. They'll provide names of other officers involved. And they'll confirm that you were running this operation from the beginning. Kemp's jaw worked. This is all circumstantial. You have nothing that proves. We have $43 million in missing equipment, Whitman interrupted. We have your voice on recording ordering illegal detention. We have documentation of falsified medical records. We have testimony from 3 separate sources. And we have Captain Hayes's original evidence that you thought you'd erased. He closed the folder. Colonel Warren Kemp, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, illegal arms trafficking, unlawful detention, and obstruction of justice. Federal marshals will transport you to pretrial custody pending formal charges. The marshals moved forward. Kemp stood slowly. Looked at me one more time. You should have stayed quiet, he said. Yeah, I replied. I should have. But I'm really bad at following orders from criminals. They led him out. The door closed. And for the first time in months, I could breathe. The courtroom stayed quiet for a full minute after Kemp left. Then Judge Whitman turned to me. Captain Hayes, there's one more thing we need to address. Your medical records from October 2 years ago. I'd been waiting for this. We had a forensic medical team review your blood work from that period. They found trace evidence of 3 different medications in combinations that shouldn't exist in routine psychiatric treatment. He slid a report across the table. Lorazepam. Scopolamine. And a compound we're still identifying. Together, they create what's known as chemically induced retrograde amnesia. Memories from before administration get fragmented. New memories during the treatment period fail to form properly. They drugged me to make me forget. Yes. But here's what they didn't count on, your body metabolizes these compounds slowly. Traces remained in your system for weeks after you were released. We found them in routine blood work you had done 2 months later for an unrelated medical appointment. Captain Reeves leaned forward. This proves the psychiatric hold wasn't legitimate medical treatment. It was chemical assault. Which adds another federal charge to Kemp's list, Whitman said. But it also means we might be able to recover some of what you lost. One of the investigators spoke up. We've arranged for you to work with a specialist in trauma-induced memory recovery. It's voluntary. But if you're willing, we might be able to reconstruct those missing weeks. I thought about it. Did I really want to remember? What if I don't? I asked. What if I just move forward? That's your choice. But there might be details in those memories that help us identify other people involved in this network. Right now we have Kemp and his immediate circle. But whoever's running Titan's strategic group is still out there. And they're not going to stop just because we caught one colonel. Fair point. I'll do it, I said. 3 days later, I was sitting in a medical office in Virginia with Dr. Chen, a specialist who looked too young to have the credentials listed on her wall. She used a combination of cognitive interviewing and controlled medication to help access fragmented memories. It wasn't like flipping a switch. More like finding puzzle pieces in a dark room. But slowly, things came back. The warehouse in Alaska. Working late because I'd found discrepancies in the shipment logs. Printing everything out because I didn't trust the digital files wouldn't disappear. Calling my CO to report what I'd found. Being told to come to his office at 0600 the next morning. Walking in. 2 men I didn't recognize waiting with him. A needle. Darkness. Waking up in a white room with no windows. Days blurring together. Medications that made everything feel distant and unreal. Questions I couldn't answer because my brain felt wrapped in cotton. Then suddenly being released. Back at my desk. Everyone acting like nothing happened. The memories weren't complete. But they were enough. You documented everything before they took you, Dr. Chen said after our 3rd session. Your subconscious knew something was wrong. That's why you emailed the files to yourself. Some part of you was trying to protect the evidence. I'd saved my own case without even knowing it. When I told Judge Whitman what I'd recovered, he made notes in that careful way of his. This confirms the timeline. Kemp ordered your detention the same day you called your CO. They moved fast because they knew you were close to going public. What happens now? Now we build the case against everyone involved. Kemp will likely take a deal to reduce his sentence. But we're going after the people above him. The ones who built this network. The ones who profited while service members like you paid the price for telling the truth. He paused. There's something else. We've identified 2 other cases similar to yours. Officers who reported irregularities and then mysteriously had their careers derailed. We think they were targeted by the same network. Are they still in service? One is. The other was medically discharged 3 years ago for psychological unfitness. Which we now believe was fabricated. I felt cold. How many people did they destroy? We're still finding out. 6 weeks after the sealed hearing, I stood in Judge Whitman's office one last time. All charges against me had been dropped. My service record corrected. Security clearance reinstated. The promotion I'd lost was back on track, along with back pay for the months I'd been suspended. Claire was there too. No charges filed. Full immunity maintained. She'd even received a commendation for her cooperation with the investigation. We looked at each other and started laughing. The kind of exhausted, disbelieving laughter that comes after surviving something you shouldn't have. Colonel Kemp accepted a plea deal this morning, Whitman said. 20 years federal prison. Forfeiture of all military benefits. He'll testify against the Titan Strategic Group executives in exchange for avoiding a life sentence. And the others? 3 more officers arrested. 2 civilian contractors. We're still tracking down the financial network, but we've frozen $47 million in assets. Some of that equipment has been recovered. Most of it's gone. He pulled out one more folder. Thinner than the others. I told you there were 2 other cases like yours. Both officers have agreed to cooperate with new investigations. We're reopening their records. Correcting the damage. He slid the folder across to me. We could use someone who understands how this network operates. Someone who knows what it's like to be targeted. Someone who won't stop digging just because the evidence gets buried. I opened the folder. Details on both cases. Officers whose lives had been destroyed for doing exactly what I did, telling the truth. You want me to investigate? I want you to help us find everyone involved. This goes deeper than Kemp. Deeper than Titan. We've uncovered 6 years of fraud, but I think it goes back further. And I think there are more victims we haven't found yet. Claire looked at me. You don't have to do this. I know. But I was already reading the files. Already seeing the patterns. Already feeling that familiar pull towards something that needed to be exposed. I'd spent years believing loyalty was guaranteed by blood. That family meant something absolute and unchangeable. Turns out, justice requires loyalty too. The kind you choose. The kind you fight for even when it costs you everything. I looked at Judge Whitman and nodded. When do we start? He smiled. We already have. My phone buzzed. Encrypted message. New case file. Another officer who'd tried to blow the whistle and paid the price. I looked at Claire. She was reading over my shoulder. You in? I asked. She didn't hesitate. Always. We walked out of that office together. Two sisters who'd been used as weapons against each other. Who'd survived manipulation, threats, and a conspiracy that nearly destroyed us both. Now we were hunting the people who thought they could bury the truth. They were about to learn something important. Revenge doesn't always come fast. Sometimes it comes later. When you're ready. When you've got everything you need. When they've forgotten you're still watching.